ISIS is wrong, that Islam is not incompatible with a Western secular democracy, a free place
but
like
on the
Canada.
other hand, we need to make sure that we're working with communities like the Muslim community, for example, to demonstrate that that Islam is not incompatible with free and open Western societies.
Really, Justin? Because I've got a London, England to show you. Things don't seem to be going very well there. And it seems like you want us on the fast track there. So, oh, that's one I don't need. So, at the end of last year, Justin sat down with CTV News, and I don't know why this should have been loaded. And he said at the end that returning ISIS fighters will be an extraordinarily powerful voice for Canada. Okay, so I wanted to look for that interview, and I found it. And I will show you the parts that are pertinent right now. And, well, I'll find it and I'll load it. But I think it's really interesting, the whole interview. The link will be in the description, as usual. But I'm just going to show you about 2 minutes of it.
Terrorist attack.
You called it terrorism, and yet he's not charged with terrorism. There's so much debate over the word terrorism.
And we use the word. Absolutely, because it is. And the important thing to reflect on in that is ensuring that we're creating a society in which acts of hatred, acts of violent intolerance, meant to strike fear into the hearts of a community, are recognized as terrorism, whether they come from the right wing or whether they come from radical returnees.
Based on a lot of the questions we received, there is a genuine fear about these returning ISIS fighters. Do you really believe they can be rehabilitated?
Some of them definitely can't, and that's something that we have to be very, very alert to. And that
people want to know why they aren't immediately put in jail.
Because we have rules and laws in this country. The previous government, that was a lot harsher on its rhetoric around terrorism, weren't able to do any more. They didn't put any charges against any single one of those returnees, and there were dozens upon dozens who returned in their time as well.
I think it's now that in Syria and Iraq they've been declared defeated, there is a question of them coming back to this country, and you can't possibly monitor all of them, can you?
Yes, we have security agencies that are engaged on this file very much, but there's also a lot of community outreach going on. We know that actually someone who has engaged and turned away from that hateful ideology can be an extraordinarily powerful voice for preventing radicalization in future generations and younger people within the community. But all this to say, in no way would we ever allow Canadian security, Canadians' safety, to be compromised.
Well, there's a couple of things there, Justin. I disagree with you. So we have returning ISIS fighters in Toronto, and he does an interview with the New York Times, telling them about how he killed a bunch of Canadian who went to fight. Telling them how he killed a bunch of people. So here's the report.
For the so-called Islamic State and then came home is being hotly debated tonight. The man who uses the name Abu Huzaifa claims he took part in an execution-style killing in Syria in 2014. He confessed in a New York Times podcast, and that's led to demands from conservative politicians to know why he hasn't been arrested. Our chief political correspondent, David Aiken, is following this story for us. David, this former foreign fighter has talked to Global News as well. What's he saying?
Well, Donna, when Global News interviewed Huzaifa a year ago, he denied ever killing anyone during his 6 months with ISIS in Syria. But Huzaifa had a different story for the New York Times. In the latest episode of the Times podcast series called The Caliphate, Huzaifa describes in detail how he and his ISIS comrades trained for and then carried out a group execution. Huzaifa said he shot a man in the back of the head.
You kind of just have to close your eyes and do it. And just shoot.
He described his feelings before the killing and after.
I kept thinking we killed them. Or like they were middle-aged men. And I'm just a kid.
That episode was put...
I'll leave it there. You guys can watch the links in the description down below. But Justin Trudeau just said, our first priority is to keep Canadians safe. And he said, radicalized fighters who have been trained by ISIS would be a powerful voice against that coming home. Did that sound like a powerful voice against anything to you? I mean, it sounded a little bit like he was fondly remembering it. I'm not sure. Anyway, so in addition to, losing track of, allowing a confessed murderer on the streets of Toronto with impunity. I mean, could you kill somebody in China, talk about it on a public podcast, and come back home and expect to be left alone? Or another country, England? Can I just kill somebody in England and say, man, that dude was a middle-aged guy and I killed him? Can I do that and just come back to Canada? Evidently I can, as long as I was fighting and was trained by ISIS. So that's weird. The other question was, how are you going to keep track of them? And Trudeau said, oh yeah, no, there's a federal agency on that. You know what? I'm gonna show that part one more time. Hold on. All right, sorry, I found it here.
There were, dozens upon dozens who returned in their time as well.
I think it's now that in Syria and Iraq they've been declared defeated. There is a question of them coming back to this country, and you can't possibly monitor all of them, can you?
Yes, we have security agencies that are engaged on this file very much, but there's also a lot of community.
That was a really, really thick answer. We've got security people who are engaged on this file very much. Yeah, that's a great answer there, Justin. Okay, so where are they? Oh, right. We've lost them. So after 2 weeks of inquiries by Post Media Relations Officer acknowledges the department has not produced any report in almost 2 years on 50,000 Syrian refugees in Canada. Okay, so there's no real mechanism to track or follow these people. There's no real mechanism to catch confessed murderers who are bragging about it on New York Times podcasts. There's no mechanism to stop people, and there's no mechanism to charge people. So do we have a country, or is Justin in charge of nothing at all? I really don't understand. So between radicalized mosques, sorry, I jumped ahead. Losing 50,000 Syrians, murderers on the streets of Toronto, is ISIS claiming responsibility for terrorist shootings in Toronto on the Danforth. 42 kilograms of carfentanil, which is not a drug trafficking amount by any stretch of the imagination. 1 kilogram has 50 million lethal doses. 1 kilogram is enough to kill the entire population of Canada. 42 kilograms with the brother of the Danforth shooter should not be written off as drug trafficking. That's an abomination. And oh yeah, yesterday, Fredericton shooting. They're still not releasing the name. Canadians are no safer, sir. Canadians are much, much less safe because of you.